Broken Country by Clare Leslie Hall is on pretty much every best book list of the year. So is this book worth it, or should you make a break for it now? Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop spoiler-free shop for all things audiobook. Now, I can't tell you specifically where I heard about Broken Country because it's kind of everywhere, but I put it on hold from the library and got my copy and proceeded to listen to this 9-hour-long saga. The book follows a woman named Beth. It also follows her husband and her first love, who becomes her current love in this story. Now, they've spent a long time apart, but the book speaks a lot to small decisions that we make, the impact that they have, and the consequences from those decisions, even if it's decades later. I read that this book is full of twists and turns, and I will say that that is true. But without spoiling anything, at least the first 2/3 of this book is devoid of twists and turns. So you do need to be patient, but I think the payoff is worth it. I found Beth to be, interestingly, very neutral, considering her morally gray actions. I mean, this woman is in the midst of an affair, yet as a listener, I felt permission to just sort of observe her without really having to judge her. So it's an interesting perspective on the writing, because I didn't really think so much about what Beth was doing so much as what was happening in the story. Even though many of the characters are complex and some of their actions are questionable, I found that they were written with a depth and realism that allowed me to really engage with them as a listener. The ability to be judgment-free as I paid attention to the story was a really interesting idea, especially because for some of the characters, the true depth of their complexities are not really revealed until the end of the story. In spite of that, however, I do think that Clare Leslie Hall has done a great job of seeding those expectations. So the payoff is late, yes, but the roots are there. I feel a strange kinship between Beth and Martha Ballard of Frozen River, which I know is a really popular book of late. Now, Beth is not exactly Martha Ballard. I mean, she's not sort of the upstanding citizen that Martha Ballard is, but there's something about the strong female lead character and the decisions that she makes in context of her situation that I felt like readers of Frozen River would enjoy about Broken Country. The book is narrated by Hattie Morahan, who honestly I had really never heard of before, but I think she was a particularly engaging narrator, and she took some of the slower parts of the book and carried them in a way that really helped the writing. Now, she did a great job with the voices, and I think she was well cast for the part, but again, sometimes a narrator, when they're doing their best work, actually falls back into the story, and she did at the right moments. There were a couple of things that honestly were not to my liking with this book, not enough to make it not a good read, but for example, I'm not really a fan of sassy bits, and there were quite a few in this book. Now, I will say they were relevant to the context, and they definitely were not gratuitous, but I can personally do without those parts, so I think it's always possible to establish things about a relationship without going into the nitty-gritty details, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who love to read that stuff, so it didn't turn me off from the book. It's just, again, not my taste in reading. Those moments were balanced and purposeful, and they did help establish character and motive, so I guess in the end I'm okay with it. I also felt like, particularly at the beginning of the story, the structure was really confusing. It follows a rather typical, I'm going to live in the current timeline for a while, and then I'm going to jump back to the past to provide you context. And as much as I've seen that many times in many stories, there was something about the way this was done where I didn't really quite always understand where I was jumping to in time in this book. I will give the book credit, though, and say that it did clarify as the book went on, so it was really a struggle with the beginning of the book, not the entire book. It's interesting because this difficulty with the beginning of the book also made me think that I was maybe reading something that was predictable. And there were a couple of moments as I was in the middle of this book where I thought, I know exactly what's going to go on. Yeah, P.S. I was completely wrong, and that was not true of the ending. Now, it's interesting to make a reader think that they know what's going on, and then find that there's a huge twist that you don't see coming, and I really did get caught off guard by the end of this book. So again, I do think the payoff was worth it. I think overall, if you're someone who enjoys depth in storytelling, character studies, and you're okay with books that require a little bit of patience, then this is probably a great read for you to pick up. And for those of you who are in the middle of this and are struggling, I would say strap in and hold on for the ride, because there's a huge delay in the relevance of the backstory for the characters that I find was very gratifying. For those of you who are super attentive readers, I think that you're going to find that the initial ambiguity resolves into a deeper understanding of the characters and what their motivations are and where things come from for them. For me, this was a 4-star read, and I get the hype. Now, this is not a debut for Leslie Clare Hall, but it is within the US, so I think we can expect to see more from this author. So again, if you're looking for a book that unfolds slowly and asks for you to be patient as a reader or listener, then this one is probably for you. But remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love, so make your own opinion, but thanks for listening to mine. See you next time.